Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hanging Out with Howie. And tonight we have a very topical subject that we're going to talk on. And I could not think of two people that I would rather have on for this particular topic, because I may know some things, but I know people that know more than me. So I picked these two. Please welcome to my left here, Jimmy Reid and Lou Paris. And what we're going to talk about is basically security for your banking, for your online presence on social media, and how to protect yourself and your business and your money and your reputation. So I'm going to give you a quick Reader's Digest version of something that happened to me last week. I did a video on. And I woke up to a message that said, "Hey, I think you've been hacked on Facebook." So I immediately went in and I'm like, everything seems fine. So, I searched for myself and I couldn't find myself except for my own profile. And I thought, well, if I was a criminal and I did that, the first person I would block would be the person I'm trying to take over. So I asked, I messaged these guys back and I said, "Are you sure?" And they go, "Yep, it's up there." And I'm like, "Okay, I've been blocked by that person." I said, "Could you please send me a screenshot?" And they did. And I contacted Facebook through their help center, and they asked me a bunch of vetting questions and so forth. And I have what's called two-factor authentication, and they sent me a 6-digit code to my phone, which I entered, and then they said, just please describe your problem, and I did. And then in big bold letters, if you have video or pictures, please put them here. And I did. I sent the picture that my friends had sent me, and in less than 2 minutes, they said, "Hey, the profile's gone." So I wasn't actually hacked; I was cloned. But fast forward, and I'm hearing a lot of people that have actually lost their accounts because they didn't have two-factor authentication, and the hacker got got the phone number. So, well, he filled out and yeah, they've lost their stuff. And then, unfortunately, one of our friends got a phone call today that sounded like it was from the bank. And he answered some questions, and then he had second thoughts and called the bank and said, "No, there's been suspicious activity," and so forth and so on. So I've called in the big guns. So okay, my first question, I guess, would be, Lou, you have worked for the FBI for a while, and then you had a fancy term I never heard of. Can you tell us what that is and what it means?
So the term is probably PerSecOps, personal security operations. It's covering your behind, if you will. There's so much potential of exposure, be it social media, be it your PIN on your credit card, being subjected to social engineering, like that. You're the person who got defrauded from that banker that called. All these threats exist, and they're getting ever increasingly sophisticated. It's a sad state of affairs that almost anybody that like you name 10 people, probably at least 3 or 4 of them have had some type of compromise, probably just in the past few months, if not a couple of years, over something. And it can be very nefarious. It could be very benign. You just never know. But, it's always there's a really good policy, and practices that you can do to protect yourself, at least as much as humanly possible.
All right. Jimmy, you've had a lot of experience in the IT. What was your role in that? Was there any protection type thing?
My experience with IT goes back to Department of Defense and DOJ.
Ooh, we got the big guns for sure.
We're both at DOJ. That's awesome.
Okay, I'm going to log off, let these two talk.
And then I moved into healthcare IT And so I was part of the team to put together some of the early HIPAA policies as far as HIPAA high tech goes. So it's pretty fun.
And healthcare is probably one of the most targeted vectors of people trying to gain access and gain information. It's rife with, some companies trying to be very, very proactive and be very good in their policies and procedures, and others who are a bit lax and they, fall victim. So it's
so true.
We have people like Jimmy who can, help gauge those policies and do those things. That's what the world needs. Is like every good business needs some type of IT, person to really help, guide their decisions and all.
Okay, now here I am, just a regular guy here, trying to run a business. What's the first thing I should do to protect myself?
Run.
Oh, no, I can't run that fast.
There's so much. I don't even know where to begin.
At the most basic level, I would say make sure you're not using the same password on multiple sites, as well as for any site that supports it, enable the two-factor authentication. At a basic level, that'll really help you.
And just like when you had Howie, your cloning, instance, having that two-factor authentication, helped to save your account and save your information. And Google, Facebook, most banks, a lot of these places do have that. So every single opportunity that you can. And I would also stress highly using a password management system like 1Password, LastPass. I personally love 1Password. They consistently put a bounty out there for people to try to actually hack into their product. So they
really,
and they've still to this day have not been hacked unless there's a weak password. As long as you use a strong master password to begin with. We could definitely talk on the links and entropy is what it's called to make things more and more complicated. If you do that, then you should have a unique password for every single place that you go. Because if it's ever compromised, it's only that password that's ever compromised. It's not your bank account that's compromised, your Facebook account, your Apple account. I showed when one of the last companies I worked with down in the DC area, and it was offensive and defensive security. We showed within 5 minutes of attacking, and this is before Apple did two-factor authentication, but actually got a hold of his Apple account and his Twitter account and basically seized his phone number to be able to use it on there and took over his, started posting on Twitter inside of 5 minutes.
Wow. So that was like, what do they call it? The white hat hacker?
That's white hat hacking. This was purposefully a demonstration to show that. Of course, we had somebody picked in the audience that he was comfortable with, and we're gonna, he basically give it your best shot. And it didn't take much. We had two people in the background. One scoured his social media, found his middle name, his place of birth, his, the basics of basics. And you call up Apple, this is social engineering. Hey, I forgot my password, blah, blah, blah. And you gain their confidence and they could reset your account. This is, again, before two-factor, and that's it.
And with all these apps and polls and stuff on Facebook now, it is so easy to get people's personal information. It's like, it was one of those things going around, post your favorite colors and all this stuff. It's like, and I'm looking at this list, and it's all the stuff that be in the.
I just saw one literally an hour ago. Post your date of birth, or is it your month of birth and your first car that you owned, and that's like your porn name or something like that.
Right.
Like, this is the right person. Why would you be posting this?
Right.
And no joke, and she was a DJ, and about at least 20 people had responded inside of like 5-6 minutes.
Oh my God. So 20 people have their vetting questions or whatever are out there.
Yep. And, people, they never think twice about it. They see it as a fun exercise. Let me do something with that. And granted, we all share too much information out there. It's social media.
Right.
It's just the way it is. But once you start putting in your favorite color, the school that you went to, your first favorite friend, these are all the security challenge questions.
Who's your favorite cousin?
Yeah, who's your favorite cousin? Exactly.
Now, Jimmy, can you explain to the viewers what is two-factor authentication?
Basically, with two-factor authentication, it's your password. Then there's another mechanism that's used to prove that it's you. Sometimes they'll send you a text and you enter a code. One of the tools I like to use is some type of authenticator app where it generates a random series of numbers that I put in. And so on websites and web services that support that, I actually prefer that over just the random text. Because if my phone get lost or cloned or whatever, but this authenticator app, one of those is kind of hard to break because the number changes at random. You'll be in the middle of typing a number and it changes on you. You're like, oh, I gotta type faster.
Okay. Now, I've see a lot of ads for this sort of thing, and for $30 a month you can get VPN. Lou, what is a VPN, and is that really helpful to protect yourself?
No, it's to an extent. VPNs basically is what's called IP obfuscation. This is taking what your location, what your IP address that your cable company, Verizon, whoever who's assigned you, that's your location, that's your serial number, if you will, to reach you numerically. A VPN creates a tunnel between one location to another securely, and it egresses out that location. Some people use that to, let's say, if you're Netflixing and chilling, but let's say it's a film that's not available in the US, but it's only available in Europe or Japan or Australia. You can VPN into those locations and appear that you're at that location. Again, it will obscure where you're coming from, but that doesn't necessarily really, protect you in meaningful ways unless you're skirting someone to a degree, or you're purposefully trying to just, be off the grid as much as possible. You still want to have internet access. You still want this, but you don't want to appear like you're from Kingston, New York. In my location, I might want to appear like I'm coming from California or something. But there are some benefits in some directions, but more so, and for this personal security side, it is about two-factor. It's about being very frugal with the information that you share, having a password management system. If you have, your debit card, when you're at a gas station, Jimmy the card reader a little bit.
Yep. Take and grab it.
just a little bit. No joke, at least 3 occasions over, it's probably been about 3 years now, somebody put a skimmer on top of it, and they've gotten so sophisticated now. They really look like, and they're brazen, not just gas station, but ATMs and all that. This one person did it at a bank ATM, so cameras abound and everything, and that thing still stayed there for 3 months.
Wow. And speaking of
the amount of data that's collected, and then they found about 200 yards, he found a transceiver, which was basically, pulling off of that receiver and then transmitting it out via cell phone. And, this is so inexpensive now. You can 3D print a lot of this stuff. You don't even have to buy it off the internet anymore. If you have the technology, guts about you, you can print it all and be in service pretty quickly.
You can take a Raspberry Pi and have the power of what was a supercomputer back in the day and running off a USB battery bank and just sit and skim passwords off of Wi-Fi.
Literally a computer about the size of the camera bump on a phone. They are getting that small now with a considerable amount of power.
Wow, that's frightening to a degree. But I always I cover. And now, what would be for our viewers the top 3 things you each would do to protect yourself and your business? Jimmy, we'll start with you.
First, as it relates to my money, I don't use my debit card anywhere. I will move money to a special account and then have just the amount for that. No, if I'm spending $1,000 on something, all right, I'm gonna move $1,000 over to this online card. I have a dedicated card for the gas station. If the card is happen to get scammed, it's on a credit card where it's easier to fight versus your bank account where they don't take your cash. And that's a little bit harder to fight. That I would definitely say, I do not hand my cell phone to anybody. I've heard instances where people with bank accounts and cash apps was drained because they let a stranger use their cell phone.
Wow.
They cashed out themselves money and cleared the notification.
Yeah, because in a lot of cases, people are already logged into their bank accounts and all that. They don't put, password protector stuff or Face ID. And next thing you know, you've got the keys to the kingdom right in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
A third thing on the computer side is some type of active virus scanning. It's inevitable that they'll probably get in, but you want to be able to, as much as possible, prevent them from getting in. But also you need to plan what happens if.
Right.
Is a day zero vulnerability that was exploited in Apple or Mac. What's my business continuity plan if my business account is compromised? If my Facebook account or business page is compromised? Because you got to worry about if they get access to your social media. Now you got to worry about your brand reputation being compromised.
Yes.
They post something crazy. Negative stuff travels much faster than positive.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Lou?
I was at Jimmy stole all my good stuff. So continuity of operation, especially from business, is critical. I literally wrote the book at 3 agencies, Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance, FBI, and Justice, where, if a suitcase nuke went off by the White House, people moved to here, operations happen here, people are working from home. Well, what happens if your computer crashes? Is all your data on there? Is it being backed up into the cloud? Where is the state of that? If somebody compromises your accounts, how do you shut them down? Having all this just general prior knowledge, even spending maybe one time of year, just going over, God, if this happens, who do I need to contact? And it's sometimes good. I actually have, for one of the businesses I run, I have a contact list of all the major players, from communications, storage, Dell, if the equipment caught fire. I have as many contingencies as possible. So if I have to start dialing, I don't have to start searching for it. Everything is right there. So that's definitely a big thing. Again, password management, I think, is absolutely critical. It's such a low-cost service now. You can have it on your phone. You can have it on your desktop. And not having to reuse those passwords over and over again, it's one of the biggest vulnerabilities that people run into. Because let's face it, we humans don't want to remember 20, 30, 40 passwords. I have somewhere close to like 6,000 different passwords in my password vault because I've just had so many places I've gone, so many areas, over so much time, that it just makes more sense to have one very long password. And those passwords doesn't necessarily need to have the capital, the exclamation point, as long as it's long. So thinking
and remember it.
And remember it. So like, tin can, red cup, things that you want to think, receipt, things that pop in your head that mean something to you, but would mean nothing else in that order and combination to somebody else. You add 4 or 5 things, that password now is probably somewhere between 28 to maybe even like 40 characters long. That will take an extraordinarily long time, even if it's common words, for a password cracker to break. Doesn't mean it's impossible. And you should, if you can, mix it up a little bit. But the longer, the more difficult, the safer you are, especially if you are going to retain all your stuff in something like a password vault. But I can't stress enough how much that will save people if they do get compromised. And just lastly, just be smart. And I'm not talking, trying to talk down to anybody or anything, but if you're putting in your credit card information, is that website secure? Is there a skimmer on that gas thing? Just being aware. That's what kind of PerSecOps really is awareness. Just being aware with what's going on. And then if something does bad, happen, you have your plan B, you have your plan C in front of you.
And one last point I want to add is all about intrusion detection, intrusion prevention. One thing that you can do to detect an intrusion on your credit is sign up for Credit Karma. And they'll see the email if somebody runs your credit. Oh, I didn't apply for anything. Why am I getting this notification? You get an instant notification as soon as your credit is ran. On your credit cards, you could put spending limits. On all of my credit cards, I get a text every time a credit card is used. Same thing for my wife. She get a text and she use hers. That way, sometimes you be looking, what's this $8 charge? Oh, I forgot I signed up for a virtual DJ or something like that.
And it's important with those small charges too, because a lot of times these nefarious actors will just have something really small, something that you won't notice.
$2, $5,
$1, $5. And then if nobody, springs on it, next thing you know, that account is just ripe for being attacked. Then 1, 2, 3 months down the road, I actually had this happen to my PayPal account some years ago. And some Japanese anime collector ended up trying to spend about $1,400 out of my PayPal. Luckily PayPal did have their policies to refund and all this other stuff. But, it was still that awareness is as soon as something happened, it's like, yeah, okay, first off, I was not in Okinawa. I mean, I'm sorry. I wish I was, but I just wasn't in Okinawa. And next thing you know, they did some type of online purchase out of Tokyo. And it's like, yep, I'm sorry, that wasn't me. So it's just, again, being aware, just kind of, again, situational awareness.
Yeah. And one thing.
All right. Before we end this, Jimmy, you touched on this a little bit. My last question was going to be, what do we do if we've been compromised? What, Luke called it 0 day or something like that. What do we do?
You definitely want, as soon as possible, call your banks, call your credit card companies, have those accounts locked. Call and have your credit. You can go on. You can have your credit report locked. If you lock your credit file, nobody can pull credit. And that's
a free service. Ever since the big three got compromised some years ago, they enable that as an immediate action. So you can do that right now. If you don't normally, open new lines of accounts and all that, it's safer to lock it than when you're ready to do something, you contact them to open that for that 24, 48 hours. You could do it online as well through their.
And one last point, if you're going to move, it is super important to do a change of address. Because sometimes you get those new bank cards and those offers, and they'll come to the old address. So you definitely want to do that change of address. And myself personally, I think the first time you do it, they do it for 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks until every vendor, everybody that sends me mail has been updated. I renew it.
All right.
Absolutely.
Do we have any final thoughts from you guys before we close out here and open up for questions?
Like I said, be aware. And
be aware.
Online, in meat space, as techies call it, just be aware of your surroundings. Is somebody following you doing something? Are you at a website that you're thinking of buying something, but doesn't have a secure certificate on it, or it just doesn't seem right? Go by your gut instinct. It's probably right.
And I would say also make sure you got the latest Windows patches and Microsoft patches. Any applications that you run, make sure they're updated to the latest versions, because we know what happened with SolarWinds late last year. So you got to make sure your applications are up to date as well.
And
you can do everything right. but one application.
Just to expand a little bit on SolarWinds, because maybe not everybody's aware. So SolarWinds is a popular monitoring program that major industries, Microsoft, FBI, lots of people use, and state actors, namely Russia and most likely Iran as well, found exploits that basically got them to the keys of the kingdom across the board. They're still trying to assess just how bad it was, but this clearly, without a doubt, was the biggest data breach, not just from a perspective of just the information that got out there, but how long they had that access for and what they could use it for. And it was not just private industry, it was also government agencies as well. It was massive.
Yep.
All right, guys, thank you so much for being on here. Jimmy, Lou.
My pleasure.
Very, very helpful stuff here. There's actually a couple things I need to do now, too, that I had no idea that I could get even deeper into this and be protected. So thank you all for tuning in. Those of you in the chat room right now, we're going to end this. So have a good night, hang around, and we'll ask questions. Thanks again.